Step outdoors without fear and gain a sense of independence with tips, interviews, and information from blind outdoors enthusiast Lawrence Gunther.
I love skiing. Every time I do it, I have this sense of accomplishment. Yeah, I don't see what's in front of me.
Real stories, alternative lifestyles.
As long as you can put one foot in front of the other or one hand in front of the other, you can make your way up.
Outdoors with Lawrence Gunther, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio.
This is an AMI podcast.
I'm Dave Brown, and this is a podcast version of AMI's morning show, Now with Dave Brown. Catch the live broadcasts weekdays from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and AMI TV. Welcome back. It's Now with Dave Brown on AMI Audio and AMI TV. Just a point of clarification, a big thanks to Mike Ross for flagging this one for us during the break. Michelle McQuigg and I were talking about potential pandemic provincial elections, and I identified Nova Scotia as one that might be on the docket before the end of the year, and Mike Ross pointed out to us as well the territory of Nunavut must have one by the end of November of this year as well. So a couple of provinces and territories expected to have pandemic-era elections as well this year. Last Friday, our entertainment critic Michael McNeely reviewed the documentary The Last Blockbuster. The doc takes a look at the history of Blockbuster Video while focusing on the last store of its kind that still operates in Bend, Oregon. In case you missed the segment, here's a clip from the trailer to give you a little more context.
I mean, look at the James Bond section.
At Blockbuster,
Every James Bond movie. Every Avatar movie, because, there's just the one so far.
I hate late fees, but I understand that you have to do it. Otherwise, people just keep those videos. I know I did.
and entertaining tribute, Sundance Institute.
Meet Sandy, the Blockbuster mom.
So when I started in 2004, Blockbuster Video had roughly 9,000 stores and over 60,000 employees. And now...
The world moved on. A corporate giant is pulling the plug.
Do I miss renting from a physical store? No, absolutely not.
Former Blockbuster CEO Tom Casey.
I don't think anybody does.
We just need Pacific Video to send us a notice that they are exercising their fourth and final renewal option. So yeah, that kind of scared me a little bit.
How long can they survive? Sandy removes the new releases sign.
I mean, how long until companies don't even make DVDs, period? And then I don't know what.
So before we even knew that Michael McNeely, our entertainment critic, was going to be reviewing The Last Blockbuster, our technical producer, Daniel Penamondo, saw the doc and actually flagged it for me to watch. And because I do what I'm told, I did. So let's bring Dan into this show to share his thoughts on the documentary as well, but also for his take on the overall video store. Hey, Dan, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. So, okay, let's jump right into this.
Sure.
What was it about this documentary that stood out to you that made you want to flag it for me?
Oh, I mean, so I don't even recall if I knew that you worked at a video store prior to you mentioning it to me when I brought this documentary up. But regardless, I'm a very nostalgic person to begin with. I love nostalgia, just kind of when it comes over me in those ways, whether it be from like just a memory or even a smell that kind of initiates it. It always kind of stops me in my tracks, and I kind of like take it all in. It might seem like kind of crazy, but I'm just that kind of person.
Yeah.
I love it, kind of reminiscing on kind of times of the past. So when this, I didn't even know this was a thing until I was scrolling Netflix, and I'm like, oh, what is this? It's kind of like number one. It was the first thing that popped up. I'm like, very interesting. I love that time period, so let me give this a watch right away. And I did, and I just love that it was a little kind of, it's about the kind of going back in time and into that period where you would go to the video store and pick a movie and bring it home to watch. It was a very sentimental part of my life, and I loved it. And I'm sure it was for many people who had that kind of routine. So, without question, I just watched it. I liked it.
So you're going to get a chance to ask me a couple questions along here too, but I'm curious, when you were a video store goer, were you a Blockbuster attendee or were you going to independents? I know, for example, my family used to go to Montreal Stereo Video and Zazu, and then eventually Blockbuster moved into all those stores. Right. And then we were a Blockbuster family.
I mean, it definitely was Blockbuster. They were everywhere, so there was always a Blockbuster kind of within walking distance of my house.
Yeah.
Wherever I was growing up. So, me and my friends, even like me and my friends who would just be out, at night or on the weekends or whatever, just going about town and skateboarding because we were all skaters. We would go to the plaza where the Blockbuster was, and just kind of like, even if we're renting nothing, we were just kind of going up and down.
Just be troublesome youths in the parking lots.
Troublesome youths skateboarding. Yeah, we would just go in the Blockbuster and look at the video games and the movies and go up and down the aisles. It was a good time.
So Michael McNeely shared some pretty fair criticism. I mean, he did not like the last Blockbuster. He gave it, I believe it was a 4 on 10 or a 2 on 5 for his rating score. He did not like it, and he did offer some criticisms about the way in which the film was presented. And I thought it was a very uncritical look at the damage that Blockbuster Video did to the industry. So the documentary rightly highlighted something called rev sharing, where Blockbuster was no longer buying the videos outright from studios because of the pure volume they could move. They were paying way less than independent video stores and then giving Blockbuster part of the share of the rental fee. So giving the studios part of the share of the rental fee. So that was something that the film highlighted rightly that gave them a competitive advantage over other video stores. What it didn't get into when it talked about late fees is that how eliminating late fees might have been bad for Blockbuster, but it was really bad for independent video stores. I know this because I worked at an independent video store at the time that essentially got put out of business as a result of Blockbuster no longer charging late fees, because there was a Blockbuster about 4 blocks from us. And Daniel, guess what happened anytime we tried to charge somebody a late fee?
Yep.
That's not a guess.
What's the answer?
The answer is they'd be like, I'm closing my account with you and opening one at Blockbuster.
Oh, there you go.
Right? So that absolutely killed the business. And for a movie that really kind of did take at times a look into the history of Blockbuster and their overall impact on the industry, it did not take any time discussing that at all.
Yeah, and they do try to paint Blockbuster in a certain light in the film that I guess you take issue with, obviously, because you have kind of the inside knowledge of how kind of these things working at the video store, of how Blockbuster was just one of the mom and pop stores. But you pointed out, and a lot of people I guess know this, but no, it was a pretty corporate kind of domination of the market. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's sad. Like I do remember the other video stores on the block. 99-cent, was it 99-cent video, I believe, was one of them, and others. But yeah, Blockbuster just kind of took over everything.
Yeah, the other thing that the film I think like tries to touch on, but they touched on it with such a sort of poorly introduced and poorly framed character, was the fact that Blockbuster was terrified of independent film, was terrified of controversial film, was terrified of any kind of film that went outside of the norm, and to the point that sometimes if there was a controversial film that Blockbuster would do, they would have the, quote, Blockbuster cut, which would end up editing the controversial parts out of the film.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. And I guess it's similar to kind of movie theaters nowadays, where you have your independence, where you can go see kind of the latest indie flick, I guess, or a foreign movie or whatever, where, film heads, they know kind of where to navigate.
That's what they flock to. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of, I guess there's a parallel there. But yeah, absolutely, they didn't want to give up that rack space, that, coveted rack space where they could put, the latest movies and put a little section for, foreign and indie movies that no one's ever heard of. Why would you pay for that when probably one person even would venture into that area of the store?
So just a reminder, last Friday on our Twitter poll, at AMI Audio on Twitter, Accessible Media Inc. on Facebook, we asked folks for their thoughts on the video store, and if they missed the video store experience, we asked them the question, do you miss the video store experience? And we got a couple good quotes here. Andy writes in, don't miss my movie not being available. Don't miss rewinding. Don't miss the return schleps in winter. Don't miss late fees. Don't miss Friday night crowds. We also had a tweet from our senior producer, Andrika. Love the video store. My siblings and I would browse the aisles and pick several movies or video games. It became a ritual. Shout out to Video 99, Rogers Video, and Blockbuster. Nowadays, it takes me forever to find a film on Netflix and usually ends with me giving up. That's actually true.
Video 99. That's what I was thinking. Not 99.
Andrika adds in, I ended up deleting Netflix. They kept removing content, and I had no interest in going through all their originals unless it was recommended to me from someone. If it's going to be online, then it's got to make it real easy for me to buy in. But Blockbuster, I'll happily spend an hour there. Then we also have Paul writing in, streaming may be a convenient way of doing things, but I miss the experience of going to the video store, being able to talk to the clerk or a customer who's looking over the same movies as you is all part of it. Like going to a movie theater, going to the video store was very special. So Daniel, you had the desire to work at a video store, never had the opportunity though.
Yeah. So like I said, I always lived near a video store, and in my teenage years or whatever, and I was kind of looking for part-time work. I always applied. I applied like 3 or 4 times to like the local Blockbuster, and I never got the gig. I thought it would be I knew it would be the coolest job ever for someone in my age range who loves movies, obviously love video games as well, because people forget, I probably rented even more video games there than I did movies to kind of check out.
For sure.
And I don't what do you do now? Like video games are so expensive, like $100 a pop now in Canada here. It's like, if you want to try out a game before you plop down $100,
it's pretty much
where do you
impossible.
even go? Like, where do you go? Like, so it was a great way to kind of see what you actually wanted to buy in that sense. But yeah, I never got the job. Always kind of disappointed. So I was always kind of I don't know, like in awe of the people behind the counter. I'm like, man, you guys have the coolest. You have the coolest job.
We did have a pretty cool job. So Daniel, it's not quite an Ask Dave Anything Monday, but do you have a question to ask me about what it was like working at the video store?
I mean, I guess the camaraderie. Like, did you have people that you work with that were like film buffs? Like you loved film and you just talk about movies all day, and you're kind of looking at the racks and looking at the returns, the bucket of returns, and just kind of shooting the crap with your buddies at the video store. Is that was it as fun as it seemed? That's my main question.
So I still remember the names of my coworkers from that video store: Nick, Julian, Steph, Anna Maria. And Mel used to work the day shift as well. And the 6 of us would just talk about movies nonstop. The new releases, the old releases, the ones that just got into the 2-for-1 specials, constantly talking about movies. What I had the great advantage of was working on Monday nights, where it was my job to prepare the new releases so that on Tuesday morning, our day shift Mel could just go put them right up on the shelves. So I had to put all the stickers, log them into the computer, make sure they were ready to be rented that next morning. I had to shift everything down the shelf space. I got to decide what was no longer going to be a new release and going to go into the 2-for-1 section, which was tremendous power at 19 years old.
Tell me about it.
And yeah, we loved talking about movies amongst a bunch of us. But the other thing that happened too is that when you work there 3 or 4 days a week for a year, you get to know a lot of the regular customers. And then the regular customers get to asking you about the movies that you like, and you get to find out about the movies that they like. So what happens is the people I ended up talking the most about movies with were actually some customers who were hardcore film buffs who turned me on to all kinds of movies. Because I was 18, 19 years old. I'd lived a pretty sheltered life to that point. So being in this video store, getting some of these movies that were sort of the pre-1996 world to me that I had no clue, just over and over and over again, I was coming home with movies and watching them at midnight or 1 in the morning in my parents' attic and being like, I'm a film buff now. Which is pretty cool.
So like the big thing I keep going back to is always like, with my son Dante, who's about almost a year and a half now, and my upcoming son, who I apparently just revealed to the now listeners here earlier in the show. The thing with, like I mentioned before, I'm a very nostalgic person. So bringing those memories that I have from my childhood into my adulthood, they're very important to me. Like I really do cherish those memories, and so I want like my kids to have the same kind of situation in terms of bringing memories from their childhood. I mean, it's definitely not going to be a video store anymore, but theaters. I guess the discussion is surrounding theaters, involving theaters. Or if they're going to go anywhere, they're going to stick around in the future, in the near future, the far future. Who knows? But I will always be an advocate for theaters sticking around. I want them to stick around. They're not going to have any memories when my kids grow up about scrolling their Netflix queue, and it's just not going to happen. Like I want them to have those experiences, those communal fun experiences that everyone got to kind of go through with the video store and now theaters. Like I just don't want these kind of relics to go away. Like I want them to stay.
So Dan, last question here as we wrap up the segment. Mm-hmm. You're on a family trip to Bend, Oregon.
Yeah.
Do you take a trip to the Blockbuster?
Yeah, if I find myself in Bend, Oregon, I'm absolutely going to the last Blockbuster. I would absolutely make a stop.
Love it. Hey, Daniel, thank you for this.
Thank you, Dave.
You've been listening to Now with Dave Brown. Hit the subscribe button on any podcast platform and leave us a rating and a review.